There once was an ugly duckling, as the song goes, and if you're looking for the motorcycling equivalent, you really don't need to look much further than 1998's Suzuki TL1000R. It's almost as though Suzuki's stylists thought, we have to design something to compete visually with the Ducati 916, universally acclaimed as the most beautiful motorcycle on the market. It's going to be tough, but let's give it a shot. Then, after a few days of focus groups and abortive styling exercises, they sat down and said, you know what, Buggerit, it's just not possible, so let's go the other way instead. Well, they succeeded with its beaky nose, wide-mouth frog headlight, bulky front fairing, and that bulbous and strangely extended tail. Few bikes divide opinions like a parked-up TLR. On the road, it had more power and torque than the Duke, and could grunt its way clear on every corner exit. But the engine proved hard to tune for racing, and although Suzuki produced a hugely expensive race kit, they never fielded a TLR in World Superbikes, preferring to stay with their proven GSX R750 inline 4. So without the racing kudos to overcome its challenging looks, the TLR never really caught on. It didn't help that it was launched at the same time as Yamaha's game-changing R1, and suddenly inline 4s were fashionable again. Color schemes apart, the R was never updated and was quietly dropped from the range at the end of 2002. Suzuki claimed 135 bhp for the TLR, but in reality it got nowhere near that. A healthy one would dyno at around 120 to 125 bhp. To put that into context, though the 916 and Honda's VTR Firestorm could only manage about 105 bhp, so the TLR had an immediate advantage. In fact, up to around 6,000 revolutions per minute, all three made pretty much the same power. From 6K, though the Ducati dipped a bit before surging at the top end, the Honda kept going strong before tailing off after 8K, while the Suzuki just kept building strong power all the way through, peaking at around 9,000 revolutions per minute before tailing off gently towards the red line at 10,500 revolutions per minute. Critics complained at the time that it had lost the instant excitement of the previous year's TLS, which had a reputation for the power coming in with a bang, sending the front wheel skyward. The R's delivery, though, may have been less spectacular, but it was a lot more effective. On road or track, it just built speed relentlessly and efficiently. The only real criticism as a road engine was snatchy delivery lower down, around 3,000 revolutions per minute, which made it a bit of a pain in traffic. That can easily be cured with a power commander and a bit of dyno time though. The TL1000R was always a bit of a thirsty beast, easy to get it dipping down towards 30 mpg if you're heavy-handed, and especially if you're hitting the track. Even with a bit more restraint, few owners report averages of over 40 mpg on a regular basis, and high 30s is more realistic. On top of that, the claimed fuel capacity is just 17 liters, although it's not always easy to squeeze that much, and the fuel light comes on with around 3 liters remaining. So do the sums. Assuming you've got the full 17 liters on board, a good thrash will see you staring at a blinking fuel light with around 90 miles on the trip meter. If you've not managed to squeeze the last liter or so in at the last stop, it could have lit up way before that. Even if you resisted every impulse to wind the throttle on hard and got to the heady heights of 40 mpg, you'd still be looking for fuel after 120 miles, and with just 25 miles to find it. There's something a bit odd about the TLR handling. Not necessarily in a bad way, but it's got a few characteristics that seem at odds with each other. The short wheelbase and tight steering geometry point towards quick steering, potential instability, and a racy front-end biased feel. But excess weight, Odd tire sizes and an over-enthusiastic steering damper conspire to make it stable. A bit ponderous to turn, and with a lack of feeling from the front tire, especially turning in as you release the brakes. Fortunately, that's pretty easy to sort out, dropping the yokes a few mm over the forks and raising the rear slightly helps sharpen things up without losing ground clearance. Many owners recommend going down to a 180 section rear tire from the original 190/60ths again. It just tightens up the feel. Some go further and fit the 5.5" rim from a GSX R750, which changes the profile for the better. You could also try ditching the steering damper. It'll vastly improve the feel of the bike at low speed, but you may find it gets to be a bit of handful on bumpy roads. In fact, it never was. The original TL1000S version wasn't great and didn't contain enough oil to cope with hard use. It overheated. But problems on the road were more likely to be caused by running the drive chain a little too tight, so it wouldn't let the suspension move properly. The R damper is larger, contains more oil, and has better quality damping, and generally works better. Which is not to say it can't either be improved or replaced. Various firms make bolt-on conversions to conventional linear dampers. The most cost-effective option is from Hagen Shocks, who can supply an adjustable replacement shock for £299.50, or with remote hydraulic adjuster for £424.50. While you're delving around down there, check the frame around the shock mountings. Cracks aren't common, but they're not unknown either, and broken bolts are also well documented. At the front again, the forks can be improved with a rebuild or service revalve and fresh oil. If you want to upgrade, then Hayabusa and GSX R1000 forks can be persuaded to fit without too much grief. Brakes. 6-pot brake calipers must have features of the late 90s and early 00s. In theory, more power from more pad area equals better and more controlled stopping. In practice, it doesn't work. All you get is more weight, more complication, and less feel. You also need to be obsessive about maintenance to keep them working anything like properly. Fortunately, there's a solution. 4-pot Nissan calipers from some GSX-Rs and Bandits will fit straight on and improve power and feel while also being more reliable and easier or cheaper to maintain. Some other Nissan 4-pots will also fit if they have the same 90mm bolt spacing, but might need spacers. You'll probably also need new banjo bolts, as they're not the same thread pitch as the standard TLR ones. The only problem with the Bandit or GSX-R route is finding a pair in perfect condition. It's not the most comfy riding position you'll come across, but for a sports bike, it's pretty roomy, far more accommodating than a 916 or a Honda SP1, for example. With the poor tank range, you'll never be riding more than a couple of hours without a break anyway, so it's not really an issue. Remove the strange seat hump, and the pillion perch is also pretty good by sports bike standards, or at least it would be if the pegs weren't so high that any pillion over about 5 years old and or 3 foot tall will have their knees up by their ears. So stick to riding solo, and that big seat makes a good platform to bungee a big bag on there for weekends away. The high standard exhausts mean throwovers are ill-advised though. There's also a surprising amount of space under the seat for storage.